Hey guys, welcome to Star Wars on High. Thank you for stopping by. We're back with another Bad Batch episode, and Galveston has returned to the show after a couple week hiatus. And I think just accidentally, we picked a really good week for him to come back because if you guys haven't seen Galveston on the episode reviews before, he did not watch the Clone Wars. And so I really like to get someone's perspective who doesn't have all of the context we might have or that I have and see how he enjoys it. You know, is it good as on its own, or do you really need all of the Star Wars knowledge to really fully experience it? So with that being said, I'm going to pass over to Galveston and just high level hit me. How'd you like the episode? What'd you think?
I thought it was really good. You know, it just keeps building the action more and more and more. And the darkness, you always told me Clone Wars
Mm-hmm.
is dark. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, like dark, like how? And then you see this show, and it's like Crosshair's like, I'm gonna snipe this little girl. Like
Yeah.
it's just like how he is. It's just like this is crazy. I don't know. Is everyone
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, especially in the later seasons of Clone Wars, I can think of a few off the top of my head where it does get adult. And what I like to call out about the show every single episode that I've ever talked about is how it's very well animated. I mean, it's gorgeous. And why I'm bringing that up right now is I thought this episode was very cinematic almost. It had a lot of I thought like very planned intentional shots that were really well designed and had that very cinematic tone. I can think of, Crosshair kind of coming off of the ship and with like the fog and the way the glow was coming. There was just a lot of moments. His duel with the bounty hunter, we'll get into in a second because you don't know who that bounty hunter is. I just thought you're right. It's not afraid to be mature. And this one felt, again, almost like the first episode to me, very cinematic. And
They had a lot of height and dimension in like their shots this episode. Like I mean,
mhm.
they were like on these huge ships and looking down, and you could just tell there was like a really cool shot they had where the camera was just like not camera, but
Yeah,
the camera right above their shoulder, and you're just like kind of overlooking like how
right.
far they would have to drop, and it was beautiful.
And, for some background, Galveston is a big fan of a lot of the Disney movies and animation. And to me, obviously this is owned by Disney, but they have some really good animators, I think, on this show. I mean, this can't be cheap. I mean, I'm rewatching the Clone Wars, and especially from the first couple seasons, if you look at this show in comparison, it is just mind-boggling how good it is. So yeah, I want to call that out. But you know what else I like, and I've called it out a couple times as well. Speaking of dark, I think the score is really good in this as well, where it has moments I think that really impact the theme, impact the feel. And I think especially with Crosshair, they have kind of a theme going on with him as well when he enters in. That's it's kind of dreary. So totally agree. But let me ask you this. You've now watched. We're on episode 8. We're at the halfway point. And this episode revealed a bounty hunter at the end. I will tell you who that is now. That is Cad Bane, who means nothing to you because you didn't watch the Clone Wars. And he is in the Clone Wars a lot, actually. He is a very common, reoccurring character. So I'm curious, when you see this bounty hunter that you've never seen before, right? What did you think about him? Were you like, oh, it's a new character, or oh, should I know him? Like, what was your first response?
I definitely got the vibe with how they did the scene that I should know him. Like it was like a previous character, and I
Yeah,
think you and I talked about it. It gives you such Clint Eastwood vibes. Like
yeah,
they had to build the character from him, and you could hear the music like when
right,
they were
yeah,
doing like the stare down like during that scene.
yeah.
It was good. It was great. But
He
he was a cool character. I liked who he was.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because the payoff of that moment is, probably it's fan service a little bit, right? It fits. I mean, the character fits being there if you know his background. It doesn't, it's not like weird, like, why the heck would he be here? He's a bounty hunter that's used frequently throughout the Clone Wars. And so no surprise, he's supposed to be one of the best, especially at this time in the galaxy. He actually, works with a young Boba Fett at some points in the Clone Wars and others. So there's some really cool tie-ins. He very frequently encounters and confronts, has confrontations with Obi-Wan, etc. I won't go into too much detail, but he's in there a lot. So if you watch the Clone Wars, you'll see him a lot. I really appreciate throughout the show how much there's a fine balance between giving us fan service and like it being good. There's like kind of like winks and nods. So last episode, which had Captain Rex, who you probably vaguely know, like you don't have the same, because you've probably seen him either online or from the Clone Wars, the prequels
Big
movies,
character.
right? But he is huge in the Clone Wars, fan favorite, and so they've had a lot of fan service over the last couple weeks, giving us characters from the Clone Wars. And the only reason it doesn't bother me, and I will pass it back to you, but the reason it doesn't like, oh, these are just really feel forced to me, is because this is taking place like days after the Clone Wars. Like the first episode, it's like literally we're seeing Order 66 happen. So the idea that these characters are still around and are being, popping up, it makes a lot of sense to me. Like it doesn't feel like, why are these characters here, 20 years? It's like, well, because it was like a week, it's been like 2 weeks. So I feel like it, even though it feels a little nostalgia bomb, a little, fan servicey, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it feels like 8 episodes in, but if it's a good comparison, that's only really been a few days since the end of the war and
Right.
everything. But I don't know. I'm excited to see where they're gonna go from this episode because they really kind of upped the ante.
Yeah.
With I'm curious where they're gonna go. Like, are they gonna just do like a chase down, like go from
Yeah.
planet to planet, or are they gonna go all the way back to the beginning, which would kind of be cool, be kind of interesting.
Yeah. And I know what you're saying. This is the halfway point. We're supposed to have 16 episodes. This is like our halfway episode. And you're right. It did feel like the stakes were higher. We've kind of set up the next, the part 2 of the series, which looks like we have to get Omega back. And, again, like you called out the very beginning, they continue. What I really was surprised, this show, I really thought the show in episode 1, when they introduced Crosshair kind of turning, I thought they were going to have Crosshair like literally chasing them every episode or almost every episode. And it's been a long
Yep.
time since we've seen Crosshair, and I kind of appreciated that. And they messed him up, man. Who knows what happened to his face? I mean, he got charred, and that's, it's kind of, I don't know, it's sad.
Every time I think that, like, okay, in this episode, he's gonna start like having a fight with himself, and he's gonna like maybe fight back against his chip somehow.
Yeah.
He finds a way to really just smash it down and be like, okay, we're gonna flame grill my entire troop and Omega,
Yeah.
and if they don't get flamed, then I'll snipe them,
Yeah.
like snipe them from there.
Yeah.
It's just like I
Yeah.
just keep
He's
expecting
hardcore.
a Redemption arc, but he's
No, I know.
he's
I know.
lost.
I know. And what was, 2 thoughts there. One, you called it out earlier, but it was hilarious when he was like, aim for the child. He was like, make sure we shoot the
Sorry,
girl.
fool.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then, on the other piece of it, like you said, I have also thought like, okay, we're going to get the redemption arc. Is it going to be the end? Is that going to be the big final thing? Is he's going to get the redemption, or is he just going to die? I don't know at this point. I couldn't even tell you like if I'm leaning one way or the other. Yeah, because
Yeah.
typically I'd be like, well, it's Disney, it's animated, so it's going to end positive. But as we know from the prequels, for example, it did not end well. I mean, they're not afraid to go dark
It's
places.
darker. This
Yeah.
series is darker, so they're willing to maybe push the boundaries a little bit more.
Let me ask you this, as someone, because we didn't get a chance to talk last week. So we had the introduction to you of the inhibitor chips, which I'm not sure how familiar you were with that. We obviously knew Order 66, triggered something by watching the prequels, but in the Clone Wars show, we explore that a little bit more. There's a really good like 3 or 4 episode arc about the inhibitor chips. So for you who didn't have that background, is that what you expect? When it was introduced early in the show and then we saw them, have to get them removed. How do you feel about those as kind of like plot devices? Do you think were you like, these seem kind of weird, or this is kind of explaining away Order 66? What were your thoughts on the inhibitor chips?
I actually like it a lot. I don't think it's like a plot armor or anything like that. And I
Yeah.
think actually last episode really helped solidify that. I know we didn't get to talk about it much, but like they did a really good job of Rex kind of talking about that with
Yeah.
himself and with his team. And they did a good job showing how much that affected him, like
he
He's like,
grabbed his
man,
gun. Like
yeah,
when he,
like he,
yeah, he was like, you guys haven't been inhibited yet. Like you're still chipped. And he like, I'm gonna,
exactly.
yeah,
I mean, he was like, I'm gonna take you guys down because I don't trust you.
yeah,
I mean, it showed like how effective they are, and
yeah,
like it can turn your brother against brother, friend against friend.
yeah.
It's a big deal, you know. And that actually made me raise a question. You know, at the very end of last episode,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken, they basically got Wrecker's chip fixed.
Yeah. Out. They take
From
it
what
out.
I'm, yeah, out.
Yeah.
And they didn't really touch on it at the beginning of this episode, but
Yeah.
like, I thought it was interesting that they just kind of like, all right, it's done. Record's healed and
Yeah.
everything, but like,
Well,
um,
in theory they all got their chips out, right? That's what we were
and that was the other
told.
thing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering. I
So
assume they all got their chips out.
yeah. So they definitely. I mean, they definitely had to, right? But it is so we kind of saw that process a little bit in the um in the Clone Wars. So I don't remember if they. I'm trying to think back to last episode. So let me just describe it. If they did in the last episode, you can then good. But the inhibitor chips themselves in the show when they're represented almost look like brain tissue. Like they're not like what you might think of as like a metal chip that like they stick into your brain. Right. It's like a grouping of cells that have been programmed and are inserted into the brain, which look really organic, almost like maybe a tumor, something like that. And they remove them similar to what we saw last episode. And, I don't know if we're supposed to think a passage of time has happened since that. I don't think so, because I think the scavengers called at the end of the last episode to alert the Empire. And so, I was happy they did that last episode for a couple reasons. And we talked about this earlier in the show. There's been a couple times they've thrown out like obvious plot points and like they haven't dragged them out too long. Like I think we all knew Wrecker was going to have the inhibitor chip thing when they kept drawing attention to his head injury. And like I felt like they didn't let that go too long. Like if you kept dragging out like when's his inhibitor chip going to go? And they did it, I think, again with like, they had their episode where Omega had an option to leave and she didn't, right? Like they've hit a lot of the cliches and kind of got them out of the way. And so, I for me, it's always curious, like the inhibitor chips made perfect sense because I have the background of the Clone Wars, but I wasn't sure if like a fan who hadn't watched that is like, what? The clones had chips and that's why they did Order 66. But there's a really good episode arc. I want to highlight this 3 or 4, and I will make you watch the Clone Wars once this is done to go back. Right. Especially the later seasons are just so worth it. So let me ask you this though. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Do you have something to add there?
No. I was just gonna say, like I said, the inhibitor chips I think have been a good. This show has done a good job of. You don't just throw something out there and not build on it or build up to something.
Yeah.
They do a great job of something theming wise is going to lead up to it. Rex really helped drive the emotional and like heartfelt thing about the chips and like how they can affect you. And so like they do a really good job of it.
One thing that's been on my mind since early in the show, probably episode 2 or 3, is what is going to happen with the Kaminoans. And what I mean by that is, I think I might have said it to you in the past, but if not, I'll repeat it. It's like, we know the Empire can't have any loose ends. Like, they're going to have to kill all the cloning facilities. They're going to have to kill the Kaminoans, right? Like, that's where they have to go. Because in my head, yeah, he wants to start a new army. He's still using the clones for now, as he's going to have to go through the recruitment process. But if you're the Emperor, you can't let what happened to you, what you did, happen to yourself. You can't let someone commission a clone army. It just can't happen. So they're dead, right? That's where they're going, right? It has to be like the end of Camino, right?
That makes sense to me. And like, more about the bigger universe, but from the prequel movies, they don't like once they show the like Camino, they don't really go back to it.
Right.
So it makes sense to kind of like destroy them. And I mean, they even showed in the beginning of this episode the Admiral, and then we're like fighting. Yep. And like I think at some point it's gonna butt heads, and they're gonna make the decision and destroy the facility and probably kill them.
And they confirmed in this episode what we they needed the specimen back for the contingency plan. And it's Omega, right? They need her back. There's something special about her, and that's their plan to try to have better clone troopers. And we know that there were never a bigger, better clone force, at least by the time A New Hope rolls around or Rogue One. So that mission is obviously never successful, right? It can't be successful. But they're probably punished for attempting it. They're probably, even if, I just can't imagine loose ends. And it's going to be kind of crazy, like, especially from watching the Clone Wars, because I do a lot of times with the clones and going into Camino. And it's, I think it kind of, if that's what they do, to me, it kind of solidifies the Emperor and his scheming and his kind of cold-blooded ways. I think it's going to be really dark, but I think they're going to have to do it, and I think it's going to be really smart. So,
It'd be a smart move, and it would really drive in, the gravity of the situation,
right, right,
like,
yeah,
overall. So,
exactly, exactly. Exactly. Well, here's how I feel about this. We're at the halfway point, and I think from a Star Wars, we both like Star Wars. It's weird to say Star Wars, but everyone likes Star Wars, right? But from like, me, the more deep diving fan who is into a little bit more of the content than you are, I think it's really met my expectations. I think in a lot of ways it's maybe not the best thing Disney Plus has put out, but I think it's such a good fit for Disney Plus. Like this style of show, animated and connected and adult, and I don't know. I just think it fits Disney Plus. Like this is when you made Disney Plus, this is a perfect example of how to use this platform. So to me, it's met it. But for you, as someone who might not even have been like, you might have been like, oh, the Bad Batch, that's interesting. Maybe I'll check that out. But because of our conversations, you hopped in. I mean, how have you felt? Like, I don't know if it was on your radar before, but are you like, oh, this is great? I hope they keep doing these types of shows.
yeah, I this is like me getting my toes wet in the bigger universe that is Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like you've read,
Hmm.
all kinds of books and like watch more shows and just different things. But I agree that this is like the perfect venue for it.
Yeah.
They're finding their sweet spot. And I
Hmm.
hope that this will mean more things. I know that like I think I had seen one of their shows that was greenlit got canceled. I can't remember which
It's Rangers
one.
of the New Republic, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which kind of sucks, but like I think they're still just trying to find their sweet spot. And I mean, look at Loki. Loki is
Yeah.
is great, and it's building out their MCU universe. And so, like, I mean, it's the same idea with Star Wars. This can build it out, and who knows? They could do something cool, like a live action movie
Oh,
based
dude.
on. Like, there's so many
Well,
just cool things they could do.
animation allows you to explore, and this is not cheap, but it allows you to explore like so many different eras and moments in Star Wars that like you just couldn't probably get a live action crew together for. You know what I mean? And so, by being able to expand into animation, it really opens up the possibilities for Star Wars. And I think Marvel's going to kind of do that too with like the What If series they're going to do. They're going to do it's going to be animated. And I don't know if I even told you this, but next month there's a show, you might have recalled the announcement for Star Wars Visions, what the show is called. It's going to be animated as well, and we get our first preview of that next month. So they're and I think it might be a completely different style of animation, but the point remains that this is a good home for Star Wars. Star Wars is expensive. It's expensive to make a Star Wars movie. You couldn't. I mean, could you imagine? So the first episode of the Bad Batch was almost an hour or 70 minutes. I'm sorry, 70 minutes.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
long.
yeah, we've gotten hours of Star Wars content that to do the same thing live action would take years and millions of dollars. And you can do like a really cool, unique Star Wars story through animation that just is not possible through live action. So it to me, it
Especially
fits really
with
well.
the planet building. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? They can
Hmm.
go these creatures, these planets, the people they run into. I
Right.
think they can do better jobs in animation like that. So
Yeah, I totally
it's
agree.
good. I don't know.
I,
I'm excited to see where we're gonna go from here.
I
From
totally
next,
agree.
was it 16 episodes?
It's
So
16.
eight
Yeah.
more.
I think, well, I think it's 16. See, I've been misled because I thought it was 14, then I've heard it's 16. And I'm trying, they released all the titles for the episodes, at least I think 10 through 14 they did. And I don't want to
Mm.
read them because I don't want to spoil anything for myself.
Yeah,
So
because
I,
you could. You can
yeah,
spoil it.
yeah. So I haven't looked. I think this is the halfway point though. I'm expecting, and we'll wrap it up here. I am expecting the finale. I'm expecting the show is going to get dark. And I think we're going to probably see almost all the Bad Batch die. Not in this season, but I think by the end of the show. I think they're going to
Really?
probably go that way. I do. I really do. I think if the show runs a couple years, I think we'll probably see them they're going to kill one of them. I mean, at least I think. I don't know. I just have
Who's
that.
got to sacrifice themselves or
Exactly,
something.
exactly. I just have that feeling with this show when you watch it. Like you said, it's dark, and I think this is going to be a reality. So, anyway, it was fun having you back, Galveston. I know this was kind of short notice, but it just worked out this week, and it's always fun, especially in an episode that I thought was probably maybe the second best to me. I thought the first episode was by far the best.
It's a good peak, and it leads to so many areas now.
Yeah.
Like there's so many more questions, so many
Yep.
more ways they can go. So it's a good peak.
I agree. It sets up a lot of fun. We got Crosshair charred up. We got Omega gone. We got Cad Bane back in. The Kaminoans scheming. We have all sorts of places to go with the show, and that's a good way to hit that mid-season point. So, well, guys, thank you for stopping by. We appreciate it. Make sure you like and subscribe. We'll be back in the next couple weeks. We'll have Galveston back anytime we can circle back. It's always hard with crazy work schedules, but until then, guys. We will see you later. Thanks for stopping by.